and welcome back to another rendition of Historical Equestria, a seminar hosted by the Canterlot Archives, offered to those ponies who are interested in learning more about the histories of our world. My name is SkyShadow. I am a royal archivist here in Canterlot, as well as the host of these seminars. Today, we'll be continuing with our series concerning the oral histories of the zebra tribes. As a brief recap, the zebras' histories were not recorded through written means, but through the tradition of storytellers. Our seminars up to this point have followed the tribes from where they began in Mbio Asili, the running lands of Nyumbani, which is the proper name for the continent we know as Zebrica. The zebras were cast out of the running lands for their attempt to overthrow the lions and wandered the great desert known as the Death Road. In their travels, they encountered the mystical race of the Sphinx, where they adopted their cultural habits and early understanding of magic, an understanding that was eventually broadened by the great spiders of the Forest of Webs, which they reached after enduring the hardships of the Ashen Plains. But the ancient Anasai, in their great wisdom, knew the destiny of the zebras lay elsewhere, and reluctantly bade their new friends to return to the lands of their birth once more. But what they found upon finally returning was far from welcoming. The savanna plains, while not dead, had certainly withered. Their once golden grasses were now sullen and colorless. The scattered trees were dry as bones, and the sun beat down mercilessly from the sky overhead. In their long absence from the running lands, a great drought had devastated them. The scattered rivers and watering holes were drying up, and the tribes fought over what little remained. Even the elephants, oldest and wisest of the running lands, had suffered a split in their tribe because of the drought. Some remained, but the rest had left the savannah in search of water elsewhere. What became of them was unknown. Needless to say, the return of the zebras was met with suspicion and, in some cases, anger. To begin, most were shocked the tribe was even still alive. There was already little enough food and water to go around. Adding another tribe to share in those scarce resources was unthinkable. The tribes of the savannah rallied to banish the zebras once more, until the lions interfered. Like the savannah, the noble lions had withered over the years, perishing in their efforts to maintain the order of the running lands. The once great pride had dwindled in number, and only barely clung to the control they had once firmly held through the wisdom of their king. Initially, he held a healthy skepticism of the returned zebra tribe. It had been a very, very long time since their banishment, and none had expected them to survive the cruelty of the Death Road. And yet, here they were, all these generations later, not just alive, but wealthy. They were dressed in fine spider silk cloaks and the golden ornaments of the Sphinx, and they carried with them many medicines and fresh water. The King of Lions recognized that welcoming the zebras back could bring new wealth to the savannah. But with the great drought, there would be no water to support it. And so, the King of Lions gave the zebra tribe a condition. He charged them with the task of ending the drought. Should they succeed, then the tribe's exile would be lifted, and they would be free to return to their native home. And should they fail, they would again leave the running lands, this time never to return. With their time limited, the zebras set about at once to find the cause of the drought. They called upon the knowledge that their travels had imparted to them and shared the bounties of their wandering. Using the magic jars of the Anasai, they provided fresh water to the dehydrated tribes of the savannah. What they had learned from their struggles, the magics of the Sphinx, and the medicines of the spiders, came together to create a cultural identity that remains with them even today. And while they provided aid, their most talented were examining the land itself, studying the drought that choked it, and following the dry riverbeds back to their sources. They hoped to understand the calamity that had befallen the running lands and perhaps find a solution. They healed the injured, cured the sick, and brought kindness to those suffering. But this alone would not be enough to regain the trust they had once lost. And so, the zebras called upon their wisdom to find the source of the great drought. And they did so through dowsing. Dowsing is a form of divination that can be used to locate water, precious metals, and even other ponies. Typically, only creatures like unicorns are capable of dowsing, as their horn becomes a focus for the magic of the spell. However, zebras had learned the secret of lodestones from the desert sage, and they had studied the ancient secrets of the Anasai, allowing them to fashion dowsing crystals without the aid of enchantment. These crystals were entrusted to a select few zebra, who followed their intuitive guidance along the dried-up riverbeds. They set out in small groups so as to avoid drawing too much attention. But this didn't mean they were free of harassment. The King of Lions had ordered the other tribes to not interfere in the zebra's search, but the lions couldn't always be watching them. When given the chance, other tribes would follow the zebra dowsers, often distilling mud and insults, telling them to go back to the desert. Rather than report these interferences to the King of Lions, however, the zebras stoically kept to their dowsing, not for any sense of guilt or misplaced resentment, but because they knew that retaliating against those only seeking to lessen their own despair would only serve to ruin things further. It was best for all that they found the truth as soon as possible, and their steadfast diligence was rewarded. The dowsing crystals led them along the dried-up streams to the base of the Mother Mountains, the sacred origin for all tribes of the savannah. According to the laws of the running lands, no tribe was allowed to ascend the ancient peaks. The only exception had been the elephants, who, when expecting their end, would traverse the mountain's height to return themselves to the earth. But the pull of the zebra's dowsing crystals pointed clearly at the small range. There was still water in the savannah. But to reach it, they would have to break one of the land's oldest taboos. The King of Lions was troubled by this revelation and spent a great deal of time contemplating a solution. In the end, he came before the tribes and declared that the rightful children of the Mother Mountain would maintain their respect of her. Only such as those forsaken by the running lands would ever dare to breach those boundaries. To many, this seemed like a death sentence, for none among the tribes were willing to defy the ancient laws. Not even the zebras, who wouldn't dare to worsen their already precarious position by committing such a terrible offense. Except for one. His name was Zakas, and amongst the zebra tribe, he was one of the oldest and wisest. Zakas was one of the last to be born before their tribe had been cast out of Kemet by the Sphinx. His family had passed down their memories of their initial banishment and the time spent wandering the deserts. It had been his memory that had parted the sea of sand to them, opening the way back to the savannah. He had lived long and sired a large family, but he was also known for his cleverness and cunning. Zakas enjoyed practical jokes and riddles, and it was he who, upon hearing the Lion King's decree, realized that he had been giving them permission to climb the Mother Mountains. For who could be more forsaken of the running lands than the banished zebras themselves? Unfortunately, the younger members of the tribe were still very hesitant, not wanting to antagonize the tribes of the savannah any further. So, with cackling laughter and a single dowsing crystal, Zakas set out to journey up the Mother Mountain alone. The story I'm about to reiterate is very famous in zebra history, so much so that even here in Equestria, ponies have heard of it. Nowadays, it's considered to be a well-loved story, often told to school children. Zakas the zebra journeyed along up the great peaks of the Mother Mountains. He was a very old zebra, and also a very wise zebra, and he carried with him a crystal that could always point him to water. He climbed for many days and nights, following the crystal's pull, until, at long last, he came to the very top of the mountain. And what should he find? But a great crater and a lake of pure, crystal-clear water. Zakas was very thirsty, as his home in the savannah was very dry and had not seen rain for a very, very long time. And so he went to the edge of the lake to take a drink. But when he did, the water began to roll and boil, and a great rainbow-colored serpent rose from the waters.
Who dares disturb my home?
Bellowed the serpent, baring her fangs at the tiny old zebra. Now, any other animal would surely be scared and run away as fast as their legs could carry them. But not old Zakas. Zakas was clever.
Was this your water? I did not see. I humbly ask that you forgive me,
he said, bowing low. The serpent was surprised that he did not run away and stared closely at the tiny zebra.
And who are you, striped creature, that would dare to ascend my mountain? Surely you know that those who come here will never return.
Oh yes, indeed. I am quite aware. In fact, this is why I journeyed here to there,
said Zakas.
I am old and soon to pass, as surely you can see. My name, you ask, is Zakas, and Zakas means me. But surely my name can be of no moment. Tell me, great beast, what tribe do you represent?
I am Aido-Hwedo, and I am the dragon of this lake.
Dragon? This is something that I have never heard. Tell me, great beast, what do you mean by this word?
Aido-Hwedo looked puzzled. How could any creature not know what a dragon was?
Dragons are the mightiest of all creatures. Our fangs are like swords, and our claws like spears, our scales like armor, and our breath death.
At this, the snake-like dragon roared, and a great burst of flame came from her mouth. Zakas, having sat down, clapped his hooves.
Mighty Aido-Hwedo, that is most amazing. But surely a wet home is not good for your flaming.
The dragon coiled in pleasure at the compliment, but stayed suspicious.
I choose this lake for the delicious crystals in its depths. I have the greatest hoard in all Namibia. Now be gone before I choose to eat you instead.
But clever Zakas was not fooled by the dragon's posturing.
But how far can you swim to reach the crystals you crave? This lake is very deep, I see, even for one so brave.
Of course it's deep,
the dragon bellowed.
The waters of this place are never ending, flowing from deep within the mountain. That is why I drop a rock over the source, Otherwise, it would have been even deeper.
I believe I do now understand.
Zakas had a sly look in his eye.
Then perhaps, mighty dragon, I could lend a hand?
And how do you expect to help me, old one?
With a twinkle in his eyes, clever Zakas pointed into the depths of the lake.
Surely flames as hot as yours can burn away the water's source. Bring the lake unto a boil. The rewards will certainly be worth the toil.
Seeing the merits of the zebra's plan, the great serpent dragon Aido-Hwedo turned her snake-like head and let forth a mighty burst of dragon flame. Burst after burst she fired into the water, slowly making it bubble and steam. Eventually, all the water of the lake evaporated, and Zakas watched with a grin as the steam became rain clouds far above his head.
Well, old Zakas,
Aido-Hwedo hissed in pleasure.
it seems that you're quite clever for your age. For this suggestion, I will spare you from my thanks. Now go!
A moment more, O powerful Drake. I have yet one more suggestion to make.
Oh, and what is that?
Zakas pointed his hoof at the now dry lakebed, at the enormous rock at its center.
As you said before, the water's flow does not cease. It seems prudent, then, to make certain they do not release.
And, just as the zebra said, the water was already beginning to seep out from the edges of the stone. Said the dragon, turning up her snout.
I'll just blast it away again, should it get too high.
But would it not be better if no problem should remain? Surely even such a rock would melt beneath your flames.
I see your point, old Zakas.
The dragon agreed.
You are a very clever zebra.
And with that, Aido-Hwedo again unleashed her breath upon the great stone with which she had stoppered the unending waters of the Mother Mountains. She burned and burned until the stone glowed bright red and cracks began to form.
Go, mighty dragon, again with zeal.
Zakas cheered.
Unto your breath the stone doth yield.
Encouraged by the old zebra, Aido-Hwedo took one last great gulp of air and released the biggest burst of flame she ever had. The stone cracked under the heat, and quite suddenly, flew apart with tremendous force, knocking the poor dragon senseless. The water trapped beneath the stone burst forth in a magnificent geyser, spilling over the edges of the mountaintop crater, creating rivers as it did.
You tried so hard, and I must admit, it truly is a shame.
Clever Zakas chuckled from where he stood, safe at the banks of the lake. Aido-Hwedo still fast asleep.
But hurting others to help yourself, you've only yourself to blame. And now, I think I'll take my leave before you wake again.
And so, Zakas the Clever climbed down the mountain, bringing with him the life-giving waters. And Aido-Hwedo, when she woke up, flew all across the land in search of the crafty zebra. But the rain clouds created from her flames on the water made it impossible for her to see the ground below. But sometimes, when the rains begin to let up and the sky clears, you can see her flying across the sky, hurrying home to again evaporate the waters before her lair is flooded. And that is the legend of Zakas the Clever, and how he tricked the divine serpent, Aido-Hwedo, into restoring the water of the savannah. Aido-Hwedo is a prominent figure in zebra lore, a great serpentine dragon of rainbow colors that bridges heaven and earth. In this story, she becomes a rain deity as well, bringing the rain clouds to the savannah after the long, dry season. As for Zakas himself, he returned to the savannah amidst the cheers of all tribes. So pleased was he with the result of Zakas' efforts that he not only rescinded the zebra tribe's banishment, but the King of Lions also awarded the elderly zebra with the position as his chief advisor and shaman. Up to this point, the zebras had no real leader, choosing to follow the wisdom of a council instead. But Zakas' cunning and wisdom had proved to them that sometimes fortune truly does favor the bold. And so, Zakas and his family assumed leadership of the tribe as the new Maliki. That concludes today's seminar. Next time, we'll see as the zebras help build Nyumbani into the mighty kingdom of Zimbabwe and venture out into the world. Thank you for attending, and I hope to see you here again in the future. Well, look who's finally back. How was Rottlecon?
Not bad, actually. There were some organizational issues, but the AG panel went pretty well. And the Royal High Tea was so packed we actually had to turn people away.
Did you get to give Silverquill some cake?
I did. It was pretty awesome. And he actually might check out AG. By the way, brought you something.
Oh dear. You're gonna have a field day with this one.
It's just a glorified cutie mark story. I wouldn't worry too much.
I noticed the new look, by the way. Dropping the illusion finally?
Yeah, well, I wanted something a little more personal for my appearance. And given that I'm such an anime geek... Guess who's back?